we have here one phrase which is quite profound. They shall all be taught by God. The Latin is docibiles, which is linked with our word docile. And the word comes from the Latin to teach, to learn, to absorb new knowledge. And a person who is docile is willing to accept something new. As one goes through life, one observes the comedy of human behavior. One of the most frequent faults in human behavior is the incapacity to listen. And that makes the soul limited and stuck in a rut. Because if the soul is not taking in new nourishment for the mind, if it is already full, it will not advance. And one sees it happening far more than one thinks. Observe. How many people know how to conduct a conversation? I would say very few indeed. There is, however, more to it than that. If one is wanting to grow, all can have something to nourish us with. For instance, somebody proposes to you to read something, to watch something on a CD, etc. One can have the first reaction, I haven't got time. Or one can say, Providence wants me to learn something more. I will at least, perhaps, give it a try. This morning, by chance, that happened to me. Somebody had given me, from this parish, something on the angels. And I thought, all this I know already. And I was prompted, nevertheless, to have a look. And I was glad I did. Now, it's something I'd like to share with you today, because the Gospel is about, what was it, the main theme? I am the bread of life, which you received for the first time just the other day. Now, when we have the Lord on earth, He is not alone. And you know who it is who is the main protector of Jesus on earth. His image is in this little chapel. Who is it? St. Michael. And what does his name mean? I've told you before, I think, it's 3 Hebrew bits of word. Mi-cha-el. Now, El is, what is God in Hebrew? El, and plural Elohim. And Mi is the particle who, and Cha is like. And it's what he said when Satan, who until then was the most brilliant of all angels, when he was Lucifer, which means lux is what in Latin? Lux is, what's this? It's a light. Lucifer is the bringer of light. And he was so brilliant that he wanted to be like God and be almost in charge of his own kingdom and own his own properties. It's still there in human nature. We own what we've received. Pride. Now, when he had that thought, he became independent, and he did become separate from God and had his own kingdom down under. And what happened was, this other brilliant archangel said, who is like God? And at that point, he became the most brilliant of all angels up there and given more power. And he was made great chief of the angelic host, the 2/3 roughly that remained faithful to Almighty God, while the others ended up down in their own new world, where they're still there, acquiring their own members, those souls that they draw after them down under. So this expression, who is like God, is a very humble expression. And it's what we need to have as well. We have nothing that we do not refer to him. And pride is when we stop at ourselves. Now, with regard to St. Michael, things happen with regard to the way in which he looks after the Lord on earth. I had a friend, a nun, who lived not far from here, in Drogheda, in the Presentation Convent. And she was faithful to me to the end. In fact, right next to you in there's a Bible that she gave to me at my profession with her beautiful handwriting on it. And she had gifts. She was a woman of intense prayer and recognised as such. Very well known, but now dead. And one day, she was, I'm not sure if it was Dublin or some other city, but she was at the communion rails. In those days it was still there, on their knees, and she was receiving the body of the Lord in a line, as you are. And at a certain point, the priest whispered in her ear, after giving her the Blessed Sacrament, "Sister, follow that man. He's got the sacred host." And in those days it was more difficult because it was always on the tongue. But anyway, they could take it out if they wanted to. So off he'd gone. And what was this poor nun to do? She went after him, and he was racing out once he got out of church and whizzing as fast as he could, because he had the intuition there's somebody following me. So off he went, and this poor nun chasing after him through the streets. Eventually, she cornered him. What was going to go happen this time? Because she couldn't really force. She was a woman and he was a man. So she tried to talk to him straight away. "Now look here, I know you're carrying the Blessed Sacrament. We saw you. Now, would you like to give it back to me before you go any further?" What did he do? Of course, he denied it. He said, "Now, I know that you've got it. We saw you go out with it. Would you like to hand it over?" "Go away! I have nothing to do with this!" But he would not even admit that he had it. And she tried again and again, and she was getting nowhere. She couldn't use physical force. A woman against a man, what could she do? And she was about to give up. She couldn't do any more. And suddenly, she heard, and she really heard, it wasn't just a suggestion, she heard inside a voice. But it wasn't a voice like any other voice. It was a strong, virile, male voice. And it was this: "Hold your ground." And she then looked up at him and saw that his eyes were like this. He was looking at something just behind her. She was a bit puzzled. And at that point, he put his hand into his pocket and pulled out what was by then in bits, because he'd had fright, and he pulled this thing out, crumbling. "Go away, take it!" and handed it over to her, and ran off in the direction where he was going, where they were doing black masses. They were using the Blessed Sacrament to honour Satan. So she was right. And she came back to herself and she thought, what on earth happened there? And then it dawned on her, who was there? What happened? Do you know? Can you guess? St. Michael! He appeared behind her, and that was the way that he knew that it was something bigger than himself and he couldn't resist anymore. But there's more to it than that. Sister Faustina was aware of the angelic presence. She, on several occasions, would see her own guardian angel. That's important because we can't see him, but he's always, always there. And he's very happy when we come into the presence of the Blessed Sacrament because he's got his mates with him. He sees them all, and he's in a happy family adoring the Blessed Sacrament. But also, one day, when she was on the train, she was passing church after church in Poland, and she noticed something. She noticed that in every consecrated church there was what? Standing over it. It was actually an angel. There is apparently an angel given to every consecrated church. But she noticed this. The angels of the churches were less brilliant in light than her own angel. That's interesting, isn't it? The power of our angel is huge. He's there all the time. We can never lose him, but we can upset him. Now remember that, my friends. It's very important, especially when we're in the presence of God, because we have to behave on our best behaviour, like Moses, taking off, as it were, our shoes, because the ground on which we're treading is holy ground.